In an age of war, humanity's greatest heroes stood united against the demon hordes. Among them was a man who had mastered the dark arts, becoming the strongest necromancer. Despite his power, he was struck down in battle, defeated by a surprisingly weak enemy. His party members looked down on him, criticizing his foolish choice to fight on the front lines. But this was all part of the plan, as a necromancer's true power awakens only after death. He had prepared a spell to resurrect himself as an unstoppable lich, the pinnacle of his craft. His comrades, however, casually debated leaving his body behind while waiting for the spell to activate. The necromancer could only listen as they called him creepy and decided he wasn't worth the trouble. With a final decision, the heroes abandoned their fallen comrade, leaving him to rot on the battlefield. This betrayal forces him to unleash a forbidden curse, a blasphemous power combining necromancy and healing. His body begins to reform, twisting into the legendary ancestor of all necromancers, the Lich. A ghastly, fleshless form emerges, a sight said to shatter the sanity of any who behold it. But instead of rage, he sits in quiet solitude, contemplating his abandonment. He recalls the subtle signs of their disdain, a reality he had chosen to ignore. Memories surface of being constantly isolated, always eating and acting alone. Despite the signs, he never imagined they would truly leave him, and now he's utterly lost. The full weight of his betrayal finally crashes down on him. He looks to the sky, unable to comprehend how his comrades could be so cruel. The fearsome Lich begins to weep, realizing his monstrous form prevents any return to human society. Yet, having fought against them for so long, joining the demon army isn't an option either. His lonely contemplation is interrupted by a woman who seems to recognize his skeletal form. The fearsome Lich is completely startled by her sudden appearance, reacting with comical shock. She is overjoyed, believing her master has been resurrected, but he has no memory of her. She introduces herself as Alice, a former ghost under his care who is now a high-ranking demon general. He tries to correct her, explaining that she must be thinking of a different Lich. Alice grabs his skull to get a closer look, insisting she'd recognize that face anywhere. She dismisses his confusion as a side effect of his recent resurrection, completely convinced he's her master. He grows frustrated, trying to explain he doesn't know her, but she calmly brushes off his protests. She then reveals he's been mistaken for the Demon King's strongest necromancer, a legendary figure. Alice insists on taking him to the Demon King, and he realizes this case of mistaken identity could be a disaster. He desperately tries to resist, insisting that despite his monstrous form, his heart is still human. Alice calmly ignores his struggles, mentioning that all his research materials have been safely preserved. The mention of research materials immediately stops him in his tracks, his priorities visibly shifting. He eagerly asks if she's talking about the legendary equipment belonging to the founder of necromancy. A dark thought crosses his mind as he begins to question if humanity is truly worth protecting. He realizes that being among demons provides the ultimate environment for a researcher like himself. He weighs his old duty to protect humanity against the unparalleled opportunity for his research. With a firm grip, he makes his choice, declaring that nothing is more important than his work. The scales of his morality tip decisively, confirming that his old loyalties mean nothing to him now. Looking towards the demon castle, he squeezes her hand, now fully committed to the idea of humanity's destruction. Upon arriving at the Lich Research Institute, he's greeted by a surprise welcome party of cheerful ghosts. The Lich is completely overwhelmed, touched by a warm welcome for the first time in his entire life. Alice reveals she digitized all his ancient research onto a magic tablet to prevent it from deteriorating. She snaps him out of his emotional state, eager to show him the rest of the facility. She explains that while his old tools are in a museum, the lab is filled with the latest technological innovations. He's disappointed to find the legendary Lich's diary only contains trivial personal details. Alice suggests a meeting with the Demon King, but the Lich abruptly halts with a plan of his own. He turns to her with a cunning look, proposing they conceal his resurrection from the Demon King. His reasoning is that news of the legendary Lich's return would put the human army on high alert. Alice is completely baffled by his unexpected strategy, unable to grasp his true intentions. He clenches his fist, declaring his intention to meet the Demon King, but only on his own terms. His ultimate plan is to complete his research in secret, then unleash an even greater power upon humanity. To achieve this, he dramatically explains the need to deceive his new allies first, starting with the Demon King. He quietly admits to himself that pulling off such a grand deception will be quite a challenge. His followers, however, are moved to tears by his supposed brilliance, cheering for his master plan. The Lich then reveals his true nature, admitting he far prefers the quiet life of a researcher to the chaos of battle. He knows that if the Demon King learns of his return, he'll be immediately sent to the front lines as a weapon. With great passion, he praises the virtues of research, a legacy that endures without causing harm. He freezes in embarrassment, realizing he just confessed his nerdy obsession out loud to everyone. Trying to regain his composure, he clears his throat and attempts to steer the conversation back on track. Alice instructs her followers to ignore his odd behavior, blaming it on post-resurrection memory loss. One of the ghosts still finds his cautious nature unusual, questioning if he was always this suspicious. With that, his new life as a researcher for the demon army officially begins. He immediately dives into his work, questioning Alice about the specific properties of Beastmen fur as a magical catalyst. Alice confirms his theory but points out a major obstacle. Beastmen are allies of humanity and live far from demon lands. She offers a simple solution by presenting a small black dog, but the Lich is clearly unimpressed. Realizing her mistake, she launches into a detailed lecture on magical theory, confirming why only Beastman fur will suffice. The Lich clarifies that he doesn't just want the fur, but a living Beastman to serve as a renewable source for his experiments. Alice considers the logistics, tracing a dangerous path across enemy lines to the Beastman village on a map. Despite the danger, she fiercely declares her loyalty, promising to risk her own life to fulfill his request. He rejects her offer with steely resolve, declaring that he will go on the mission himself. He then lays out his brilliant plan, to disguise himself as a lowly skeleton soldier by just wearing underwear. Alice is completely underwhelmed, picturing a goofy, diaper-clad skeleton instead of a master of disguise. She blushes with concern, worried that he might get injured if he goes to the front lines. The Lich confidently reassures her, revealing he's developed a theoretical spell for physical invulnerability. He insists that a theory is meaningless without practical application, framing the mission as a necessary field test. He masterfully spins his selfish research goals as a crucial step towards the demon army's ultimate victory. Completely convinced of his loyalty, Alice pledges her wholehearted support for his noble cause. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the demon army, a skeletal figure violently grabs another soldier by the head. The armored soldier is struck with incredible force, a shocking display of power that seems to defy expectations. A skeleton soldier recoils in shock as his arm disintegrates, realizing he's facing the legendary saint. The warrior is revealed to be Saint Rosalie, the undead killer, standing victorious over a field of fallen skeletons. She effortlessly shatters an attacking skeleton with a single devastating blow. Her overwhelming power leaves the undead soldiers twisted and broken in her wake. With a look of pure conviction, she declares her intent to purge every last undead from the world. The scene cuts back to the Lich, who is enjoying the praise of his followers before embarking on his mission. Their destination is the war-torn frontline, the volatile border between the human and demon armies. He and his followers have successfully infiltrated a skeleton unit, disguised as common soldiers. But the Lich's face shows concern as their infiltration plan hits an unexpected and dangerous snag. The skeleton army finds itself in a tense stalemate, taunting the silent human soldiers across the battlefield. The Lich grows impatient with the delay, wanting to get the battle over with so he can proceed with his mission. He observes the human army's strange passivity, wondering if it's part of a larger strategy. To his surprise, a single person emerges from the human ranks, breaking the tense silence. The lone figure calmly walks across the battlefield, heading directly for the skeleton army. A familiar voice and a chilling phrase send a jolt of horrified recognition through the Lich. As the silhouette draws closer, he realizes with dread that he knows exactly who this is. The approaching warrior is revealed to be the infamous Saint Rosalie, the undead killer. She offers a quiet prayer for the souls of the undead she is about to destroy. With hands clasped, she prepares to unleash her holy power on the entire skeleton platoon. The Lich is in utter disbelief, realizing the most dangerous person for him has just appeared. He panics, recognizing the warrior as Rosalie, one of humanity's strongest heroes and his former comrade. Known as the Undead Slayer, she is a holy warrior so powerful that even immortals are said to be helpless against her. The skeleton captain dismisses the threat, bravely charging forward to confront the lone saint. His loyal subordinates try to rally their courage, putting their faith in their captain's strength. Rosalie effortlessly stops his attack with one hand, unleashing a blast of holy energy that begins to purify him. The other skeletons watch in absolute terror as their leader is completely vanquished by the saint's power. She casually dispatches another attacker from behind with a simple tap, causing it to crumble into dust. Enraged by the loss of his captain, a lone skeleton soldier charges forward in a desperate act of revenge. The rest of the platoon despairs, realizing they stand no chance against an opponent who can defeat them with a single touch. With her eyes closed in prayer, Rosalie prepares to unleash a final, devastating attack to cleanse the entire area. The remaining skeletons panic, knowing that a single touch from the saint means instant destruction. But Rosalie simply offers a serene, almost pitying smile, unbothered by their fear. She levitates into the air, unleashing a blinding wave of holy light that engulfs the battlefield. The skeletons begin to disintegrate, shocked that her power can destroy them without even making contact. With her eyes closed in prayer, she calmly announces that it is time for divine punishment. She declares their very existence an affront to the world, calling their destruction a holy honor. The Lich watches from a distance, reasoning that Rosalie is now a direct obstacle to his research. He grimly notes that his former comrade shows absolutely no mercy when it comes to the undead. As one of his ghost followers tries to flee, the Lich suddenly steps forward, blocking its path. He looks down and urges his terrified follower to get away while it still can. He steps directly in front of Rosalie, questioning if she's truly ready to die. Their eyes lock in a silent, intense standoff, neither willing to yield an inch. The Lich leans in closer, his skeletal face inches from hers, escalating the confrontation. She scoffs at his defiance, while he confidently dares her to try and purify him. Without hesitation, Rosalie lunges forward to deliver a decisive holy strike. The other skeletons cry out in dismay, certain their new ally has been instantly destroyed. Believing she has won, Rosalie commands the dissipating form to return to the afterlife. But a voice from the shadows mockingly asks if her holy power has run out, stopping her cold. She stares in disbelief as the shadowy figure withstands her purification, something she thought impossible. The Lich calmly reveals a stunning truth. The very concept of purification is a lie. Rosalie and the remaining undead stare in utter shock, unable to process his statement. He begins his lecture, preparing to reveal the true and surprisingly simple reason for her power. She furiously rejects his claim, boasting of the tens of millions of undead she has personally destroyed. But a seed of doubt is planted, and her unwavering conviction begins to crack. His followers listen with rapt attention, their fear momentarily replaced by intense curiosity. He explains that the undead only die because they are fools who believe they are supposed to. The sheer audacity of his theory leaves both Rosalie and the skeletons completely speechless. With a condescending smirk, he dismisses her reasoning and proposes a live experiment to prove his point. He turns to his terrified followers, casually asking for a volunteer to test his invulnerability theory. To everyone's astonishment, one brave skeleton eagerly raises his weapon, ready to challenge the saint. The Lich instructs the brave volunteer to simply believe he won't die, as Rosalie prepares to make contact. Looking utterly unconvinced, Rosalie accepts the challenge and reaches out to test his absurd theory. The skeleton erupts in joy after surviving her touch, while the Lich facepalms, embarrassed that it was actually that simple. His followers are completely floored, realizing the saint's legendary power was just a massive placebo effect. With a triumphant grin, the Lich turns back to Rosalie, his point now proven beyond a doubt. One of the skeletons excitedly explains that her purification was nothing more than an empty threat. The Lich declares that with this new knowledge, the saint is no longer a threat, which only infuriates Rosalie. Having had enough of their mockery, she abandons her holy power and smashes a skeleton with her staff. She coldly announces that if her magic is a lie, she'll just resort to good old-fashioned brute force. The Lich sweats nervously, realizing his former comrade's solution to every problem is just overwhelming violence. Rosalie cracks her knuckles, ready to prove that physical force is still a perfectly valid option. But the Lich calmly interrupts from the shadows, telling her that even that won't work today. To her utter disbelief, the skeletons she just shattered begin to reform with dark magic. He reveals his presence is the reason, unleashing a powerful undead heal to restore his allies. Rosalie is stunned, questioning how a common skeleton could wield such a legendary healing technique. The Lich strikes a dramatic pose, his cloak whipping around him as he channels his power. She braces herself, feeling an overwhelming and sinister magical energy wash over her. Her eyes widen as she realizes she's facing a foe far beyond any she's encountered before. Surrounded by shadowy spirits, he informs her it was a mistake to assume he was just another skeleton. He then reveals his true identity, lounging on a throne of bones as the king of the undead. Rosalie and the skeletons are completely floored by his dramatic declaration. The Lich coolly acknowledges his own power, recognizing himself as a truly formidable foe. She wonders why a top-tier commander of the demon army is present on such a minor front. A confident smirk appears on her face as she finds the title King of the Undead amusing. Her amusement quickly turns to fiery resolve as she vows to defeat him no matter what. Unfazed, the Lich casually gestures for his newly emboldened skeleton army to advance. Rosalie meets their charge head-on, effortlessly batting away the skeletons with her staff. Despite her strength, she finds herself struggling against the endless, regenerating horde. Human reinforcements arrive just in time to see a volley of arrows launched by skeleton archers. Rosalie grimly concludes that this Lich's power rivals, or perhaps even exceeds, the Demon King's strongest generals. She identifies the figure sitting calmly in the back as the source of her troubles. She lashes out with a powerful kick, desperately trying to carve a path through the horde. Sweat pours down her face as the strain of the unending battle begins to show. She realizes the futility of her efforts. As long as he's there, the skeletons will just keep reforming. Gritting her teeth in frustration, she concedes that she currently has no strategy to defeat him. With a look of desperation, she swallows her pride and orders her forces to fall back. The human soldiers turn and flee, unable to stand against the unkillable legion. She glances back with a look of pure contempt, locking eyes with the distant silhouette of her new nemesis. The Lich casually remarks on how interesting the fight was, questioning if it's already over. He lets out a satisfied smirk, while his followers are visibly thrilled by their overwhelming triumph. A lone skeleton feels an intense chill as he surveys the now empty battlefield. His followers erupt in celebration, scarcely believing they've actually defeated the legendary Saint Rosalie. They hail him as the savior of the undead, their bony arms raised in joyous victory. One of the soldiers turns to the Lich, giving him full credit for their impossible win. The Lich smugly accepts their praise, internally patting himself on the back for a successful field test. He excitedly declares that with this victory, they can finally proceed to the Beastmen village. His expression darkens, his words taking on a more sinister meaning as he thinks about his research subjects. The other skeletons, however, misinterpret his goal and charge off to burn the village to the ground. The Lich watches them go with utter contempt, confirming his suspicion that they're all idiots. Deciding to handle things himself, he disguises himself as a common soldier and heads to the village alone. Back at the lab, Alice proudly recounts how her master repelled the saint and is now off to collect his prize. The Lich, however, arrives at the Beastmen village only to find it completely devastated. He furiously confronts the skeleton soldiers, demanding to know what they've done. To his horror, he discovers that his followers have annihilated all the Beastmen, ruining his research plans. Taking full responsibility, Alice prepares to end her life to atone for her subordinate's catastrophic failure. The Lich appears just in time, explaining he had a bad feeling and rushed back to the lab. He calmly tells a stunned Alice that her death is pointless, as he can simply revive her anyway. He then clarifies that reviving a human is only theoretically possible, and he's not sure if it will actually work. Alice is completely baffled, as magic capable of reviving humans is thought to be a myth. Unfazed, the Lich begins casting a massive spell, ready to test his theory on the fallen Beastmen. He begins the incantation, his skeletal hands glowing as Alice watches in disbelief. He commands the scattered souls to answer his call, much to the confusion of his followers. A wave of magical energy erupts from him, forcing Alice to shield her face from the sheer force. He channels his power into the devastated village, calling for the souls of the fallen Beastmen to gather. His spell works, but not as expected, summoning a colossal, vengeful spirit wolf that looms over them. The spirit glares down with contempt, but the Lich meets its gaze without flinching, calmly taking responsibility. His followers finally understand the situation, realizing the Beastmen's souls have merged into a single, powerful entity. The collective spirit roars with rage, accusing the Lich of desecrating their souls after their demise. He bluntly states his true intention. He wants them to be his research subjects and orders them to return to life. The spirit erupts in fury, completely insulted by his cold, scientific demand. Alice furiously defends her master's honor, enraged by the spirit's defiance. The Beastman spirit roars back, refusing to cooperate, and instead wishing for his destruction. The Lich sighs, noting that this stubborn faith is precisely why human resurrection is so difficult. He calmly holds Alice back, preventing her from escalating the tense standoff. He explains that their religious beliefs are the main obstacle, as they won't consent to being revived. Alice questions his blunt approach, but senses he has a strategy to overcome their resistance. The spirit scoffs at his words, reaffirming its unwavering faith and rejecting his offer. With a look of cold resolve, the Lich declares he will get their consent one way or another. He challenges the spirit's devotion, asking if its god offered any protection during the war. The Lich dismisses their faith as pointless, arguing that a god who ignores suffering is not worth worshipping. He passionately preaches that true salvation is a life of health and happiness, which only he can provide. He then reveals his true motive, promising them a stress-free life in exchange for high-quality fur for his research. With a snap of his fingers, he summons Alice to present his formal proposal. Alice, now looking like a corporate professional, presents the official Beastmen Support Project plan. The plan includes perks like gourmet pet food and 24-hour walk facilities, making the Lich confident of their acceptance. But the spirit furiously rejects the offer, calling him self-centered and completely untrustworthy. The spirit's words trigger a painful flashback of his former comrades, saying the exact same things about him. The weight of this repeated criticism shatters his composure, the emotional impact manifesting as a literal crack in his skull. His sudden breakdown alarms both Alice and the Beastman spirit, who urge him to calm down. He quickly regains his composure, brushing it off as unpleasant memories, though the new crack in his skull remains. The Beastman spirit declares it's had enough of this nonsense and prepares to ascend to the afterlife. The Lich desperately racks his brain for a way to stop the Beastmen from leaving for good. A sudden stroke of genius hits him as he realizes what might tempt them back. He rips off his own arm bone, offering an endless supply for them to chew on if they return to life. He bluffs that his magic is fading, giving them a 5-second ultimatum to accept his offer. The spirit tries to maintain its pride, but its wagging tail betrays its true excitement. Unable to resist, the collective spirit finally gives in and agrees to be resurrected. The Lich begins a dramatic countdown, forcing the spirit to frantically confirm its decision. His spell is a resounding success, as the Beastmen are brought back to life in their physical forms. The Lich observes his new research subjects, completely drained of magic after the massive undertaking. Alice and her followers celebrate his incredible feat, even as he admits he's at his absolute limit. The Lich stands completely motionless, utterly drained after expending all his magical energy. His followers look on with concern as their master seems to have completely shut down. He awakens sometime later in a bed, startled by a couple of small creatures peering in from the window. With a burst of energy, he realizes he's back in the comfort of his own research lab. He takes a moment to soak it all in, relieved to be back in his familiar sanctuary. His mind immediately jumps back to his work, already planning his next series of experiments. Peeking out of his room, he greets Alice with a sinister smile and a casual threat about his upcoming tests. He opens the door only to be stunned by an overwhelming crowd of beastmen packed into the main hall. Lost in the sea of bodies, he realizes he severely underestimated the number of subjects, creating a massive housing crisis. A panicked skeleton reports that the beastmen are now casually gnawing on their bones. The crisis deepens as his followers report protests and a completely depleted food supply. The Lich holds an emergency meeting with his inner circle to address the logistical nightmare. An aide reveals the beastmen's appetite is 10 times what they expected, draining their supplies in a single day. Alice cuts to the heart of the matter, stating that without a proper budget, they can't solve anything. He questions what happened to their emergency pet food reserves, only to receive a hesitant response. Another report comes in about beastmen children causing havoc, prompting the Lich to demand immediate action. He sinks into thought, realizing that securing a budget is the only way to regain control of the situation. Alice nervously proposes the only logical solution. They must ask the Demon King for financial support. She then remembers the critical flaw in her plan, pointing out that the Lich is still hiding his return from the Demon King. The Lich calmly decides that he will be the one to go, accepting the burden of the meeting. He frames his decision as being for everyone's future, before admitting it's really for the future of his research. With a look of grim determination, he accepts that meeting the Demon King is his only option. His followers erupt in applause, completely won over by his supposed self-sacrifice. Alice immediately springs into action, dispatching a ghost to arrange the audience. When questioned about her choice of messenger, she confidently vouches for the ghost's reliability. The news travels fast, as a demon official is stunned to hear of the Lich's return and rushes to prepare the audience chamber. The Lich, however, feels a bit awkward about showing up after his grand return just to ask for cash. He's escorted by a group of mysterious robed figures, making the journey to the throne room feel even more tense. They finally arrive before a massive, intimidating door, the final barrier between him and the Demon King. Before he can prepare himself, the doors swing open, and he's instantly teleported into the throne room. A colossal figure on the throne greets him, recognizing his form and laughing at his long-awaited return. The Lich can't help but find the Demon King's appearance incredibly stereotypical. The Demon King dismisses Alice, requesting a private audience with his legendary Necromancer. He nervously watches his only backup prepare to leave the chamber. Alice offers a small gesture of encouragement, though he secretly admits he brought her along out of fear. The Demon King's massive eye glares down, and the Lich tries his best to look unfazed. An intimidating shadow falls over him as the Demon King calls out his name. Panic sets in as he fears his true identity has been exposed, and his life is now forfeit. He then pauses, wondering if the Demon King's demeanor seems a little off. The intimidating shadow of the Demon King suddenly vanishes, revealing a much smaller, unexpected form. Instead of a hulking monster, the figure has a slender, feminine silhouette. The true Demon King is a young demon girl with a playful and confident smirk. She casually greets the Lich, who stares in stunned silence at this bizarre revelation. She rushes forward and enthusiastically starts rubbing his skull, complimenting its smoothness. The Demon King then pulls out a device for a photo, teasing the Lich for being so stiff and calling him a gyaru. She leans in close, once again attributing his strange behavior to post-resurrection memory loss. She then casually drops a bombshell, reminding him that he's the secret boss of the entire demon army. The Lich is completely floored by this new revelation, staring at her in disbelief. He insists he's never heard of this, but she simply dismisses his confusion as another side effect of his amnesia. The Lich is internally overwhelmed, finding her lighthearted attitude impossible to follow. She gets uncomfortably close, eagerly asking what their next move is now that he's returned. She shows him an old photo, fondly recalling how the previous Lich used to tutor her in demon school. He frantically tries to steer the conversation away from the past and towards his real reason for being there. The Demon King nonchalantly tells him to just take the money he needs from a specific fund. He immediately notices her annoyed expression, realizing he's touched a nerve by bringing up money. The Lich narrows his eyes, suspiciously asking her to clarify what fund she's talking about. She's shocked he doesn't remember, and he awkwardly plays along with the amnesia excuse. With a sly grin, she reminds him the funds are in the Treasury, but playfully withholds the key's location. He struggles to cope with her energetic personality, barely managing a response as she pats him on the back. The Lich offers a simple, defeated apology for not remembering. Her playful demeanor vanishes as she questions if he's forgotten all their memories together. He panics, convinced his entire deception is about to fall apart. But she sighs, once again chalking up his strange behavior to his convenient amnesia. Desperate to maintain his cover, he quickly pretends to have a sudden flash of memory. Her mood instantly brightens as she suggests they just make new memories, getting uncomfortably close. He struggles to stay focused, reminding himself this is the Demon King before asking about the key again. The Lich finds himself flustered, noting that she seems to have a soft spot for necromancers. He wonders where she could have possibly hidden the key as she turns away coyly. She then presents the key in a very provocative way, daring him to come and get it. He's caught in a moral dilemma, weighing his research against the responsibility of taking the key. She suddenly laughs it off as a joke and hands him the key, leaving the Lich visibly relieved but shaken. She points the way to the Treasury, revealing that his predecessor had apparently been saving money all this time. She proudly explains that the original Lich established the army's medical care system and let her manage the profits. He's impressed, realizing that the Demon King is surprisingly skilled at management and finances. Surrounded by treasure, she grabs his hand and boasts about single-handedly keeping the army from bankruptcy throughout the long war. He admits his own weakness with finances as she prepares to leave, telling him to ask Alice for any further details. He's absolutely beaming, his opinion completely flipped as he now thinks the Demon King is wonderful and demons are the best. As she leaves, she suggests they have a survival party sometime, leaving the Lich completely confused by the term. He comically misinterprets her suggestion, suddenly sporting sunglasses and a chain as he imagines a wild rave. The Lich quickly revises his opinion, realizing the Demon King's casual mention of using prisoners reveals a much scarier side. She then clarifies that her idea of a party is just watching humans struggle for their lives as a form of cruel entertainment. As she waves a cheerful goodbye, The Lich is left to contemplate her twisted idea of fun. Now that the budget is solved, he declares his next move is to find a disciple to help with his work. Back at his institute, he reflects on his financial success, ready to tackle the next phase of his plan. When he announces his search, an eager ghost immediately volunteers, only to be instantly shut down by the Lich. He explains to Alice that he needs a true student of necromancy, as the rejected ghost sulks in the background. His ambition is much grander than a single apprentice. He envisions building an entire research team to assist him. He then crushes the ghost's hopes by bluntly stating that the undead are simply not intelligent enough for the job. Undeterred, the ghost suggests using some of their spare undead, an idea that seems to make Alice ponder the possibilities. He announces his decision to recruit a disciple from among the newly revived Beastmen. He specifies his preference for a child, believing younger minds are more malleable and learn faster. Alice comically misunderstands, suggesting a zombie for its literally absorbent brain, much to his irritation. He gives a firm command to bring him a candidate under 15 years old, sending her on her way. Back in his office, Alice confirms the exact age range he wants for his new apprentice. She presents a group of young Beastmen children, who all stare back at him with wary expressions. He gives them a grand welcome, officially appointing himself as their new director of necromancy research. But his recruitment speech is immediately shut down by a fiery young beastman who'd rather perish than study his craft. Her harsh words strike a nerve as she calls his life's work creepy and something for introverts. Completely dejected, he asks why she despises necromancy so much, her insults clearly hitting a little too close to home. The Lich is visibly shaken as his followers try to calm him, the insults echoing his past trauma. He clutches his head in genuine anguish, leading Alice to once again blame his odd behavior on amnesia. He snaps out of it, deciding to passionately lecture the young beastman on the true virtues of his craft. He starts by pointing out humanity's flawed hierarchy, where the value of a life is determined by social status. He declares that necromancy, by contrast, is a serious academic discipline that treats all life with equal weight. The girl remains unconvinced, accusing him of merely playing with life rather than respecting it. He counters by holding up a set of scales, passionately arguing that necromancy is the only field where all lives are truly equal. With a confident smirk, he asks if his philosophy isn't the most equitable way to approach existence. He explains that while necromancers may treat death casually, they never disrespect it, mastering resurrection as a result. His complex philosophical argument leaves the young beastman completely bewildered and unable to respond. He smugly points out that his research is the very reason she's alive again. His confident lecture is cut short by a sudden, sharp accusation. The girl furiously reminds him that his army was responsible for their deaths in the first place. He surprisingly offers a sincere apology, bowing his head in shame for his subordinate's actions. She's overwhelmed with emotion, torn between her anger and the joy of being reunited with her people. From the shadows, he claims her confusion stems from a simple lack of understanding. He then presents a simple solution: she should just learn necromancy herself. His followers immediately begin a clumsy recruitment effort, but she remains thoroughly unconvinced. Their debate is violently interrupted as a massive stone fist shatters the window. He opens the door to find a giant golem attacking, with his followers desperately calling for help. A golem explains they only attacked because they heard the Lich could resurrect their fallen comrade. The other golems passionately chant for resurrection, looking to him for a miracle. The Lich calmly assesses the situation, confirming there's still enough time to perform the ritual. Alice watches with a knowing smirk while the young beastman looks on in complete surprise. After a successful revival, the Beastman girl thanks him but feels a sudden pain, prompting the Lich to remind her that recovery takes time. She then tends to the newly revived golem, which is still just a pile of rocks. The Lich offers her a potion, suggesting it might help speed up the golem's recovery. Holding the potion, the girl finally reconsiders her stance on his craft, surrounded by the other curious beastmen. She admits that if used properly, necromancy could actually be a tool for saving people. The Lich is overjoyed, eagerly agreeing that the application of a power is what truly matters. The Lich snaps, annoyed that his moment of triumph is being interrupted by the golems shouting. One of the golems then makes a strange request, asking for help retrieving a stolen sword. The Lich breaks into a cold sweat when the golem reveals their family heirloom was taken by someone named Layla. Meanwhile, two figures are seen stealthily approaching through the dense forest. A fierce-looking warrior spots the massive golems, noting how easy they are to find. With a predatory grin, she sizes up her targets, clearly eager for a confrontation. She declares that the golems are the perfect opponents to test out her new weapon. This formidable fighter is revealed to be Layla, the legendary giant slayer. The unsuspecting golems look around, completely oblivious to the danger closing in. Layla makes her move, bringing her massive weapon down with incredible force. Layla stands triumphantly over a fallen golem, laughing as she introduces herself as the invincible warrior. The Lich recognizes the name with a grimace, realizing this new arrival is going to be a major headache. He confirms he knows her from his past, describing her as a simple-minded brute who enjoys crushing bones for fun. The golem explains the stolen weapon is a legendary greatsword, a sacred heirloom of the giants. He tearfully recounts how Layla defeated their giant general and made off with their treasured sword. The young Beastman girl puts the Lich on the spot, reminding him of his speech about using necromancy to help others. As the golem desperately begs for assistance, the Lich grows increasingly irritated by all the shouting. Overwhelmed by the chaotic situation, the Lich clutches his head in utter exasperation. He finally agrees to help, but only if they give him the body of their fallen giant general in return. The golem offers to lead the way, but the Lich comically ruins the moment by pointing out his guide's questionable hygiene. The golem reluctantly agrees to guide him, completely put off by the Lich's unhygienic habits. Alice solemnly accepts his departure, promising to await his safe return. He instructs Alice to hold down the fort, deciding to handle this new mission on his own. With a farewell from his new followers, the Lich sets off, eager to get this distraction over with. Meanwhile, Layla lounges on a fallen giant, looking completely bored with her easy victory. From a safe distance, the Lich and his guide observe the scene, confirming the legendary greatsword is in her possession. He gets a closer look through his binoculars, noting that his former comrade looks as simple-minded as ever. The golem questions his need for binoculars, but the Lich casually brushes off the inquiry. With the situation assessed, he lowers his binoculars and confidently prepares to enter the fray. Layla yawns, complaining about the lack of a real challenge and wishing for a worthy opponent. The Lich emerges from hiding, formally announcing himself as her next challenger. Layla sizes him up with a smirk, while he retorts with a dry pun about his skeletal nature. His joke only serves to enrage her, and she immediately lunges to strike him down. He calmly assesses her predictable rage, confident that her brute force is no match for his intellect. He remembers her aggressive, delinquent-like nature, where even a glance is a challenge. She closes the distance in an instant, vowing to shatter his skeletal frame. The Lich quickly prepares a defensive stance, bracing for the powerful impact. Her attack collides with his magical barrier, which shatters under the immense force. Layla seems genuinely impressed by his defense, offering a rare compliment to Bones. The Lich angrily corrects her, clearly irritated at being given a demeaning nickname. Unimpressed by his attitude, Layla unleashes a furious follow-up attack. She leaps high into the air, bringing her massive weapon down to pulverize the earth where he stands. Her face contorts with rage, determined to end the fight in a single overwhelming blow. The Lich sweats, recognizing the sheer destructive power behind her simple-minded assault. He narrowly dodges, realizing that a direct hit from that attack would have shattered him completely. Layla lands with a frustrated grunt, annoyed that her target managed to evade her. But she suddenly appears at his side, landing a solid blow that sends him reeling in surprise. As he stumbles, she stands over him, ready to explain the simple reason for his inevitable defeat. The golem watches in horror from the sidelines, convinced their powerful new ally has already lost. She smugly diagnoses his weakness, attributing his loss to a critical lack of calcium. He complains about the hassle of putting himself back together after her attack. But a sinister grin reveals he's far from defeated. He turns to a massive, shadowy figure, having found exactly what he was looking for. Believing the fight is over, a bored Layla decides to head home. But a sudden disturbance from behind stops her in her tracks. She turns to face the resurrected giant general, now a terrifying undead weapon. The Lich watches with satisfaction, his true plan now in motion. Layla is stunned, realizing the skeleton she just destroyed is somehow still active. He mockingly reveals that getting shattered was all part of his plan to resurrect the giant. With a single command, he sends his new colossal puppet charging toward the shocked warrior. The golem watches anxiously, hoping the giant's first strike was successful. But Layla effortlessly stops the colossal fist, reminding them she's already won this fight before. The Lich's expression reveals he might have underestimated his former comrade's raw power. Her small frame easily holds back the giant's overwhelming force, a true display of her title. With a powerful swing of her own, she vows to finish the job permanently this time. The resulting impact is immense, sending a shockwave across the battlefield. A wild grin spreads across her face as she taunts the now shattered remains of her foe. The Lich calmly appears atop the rubble, conceding that the giant alone was never going to be enough. His shadowy form radiates a menacing aura, hinting that the fight is far from over. He then unleashes his undead heal, beginning to restore his fallen puppet right before Layla's eyes. He reveals he's not just healing the giant, but supercharging it with the souls of its fallen comrades. The giant general reforms, now glowing with a terrifying new power under the Lich's command. Layla squints, trying to place his creepy, antisocial aura, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. He smugly explains that unlike her, his puppet now has his brilliant mind to guide its raw strength. After insulting both her and the saint, he commands his newly intelligent weapon to attack. Unimpressed by his monologue, Layla fiercely declares she'll crush him no matter what tricks he pulls. The two titans clash in a devastating explosion of force, shaking the very earth beneath them. In the aftermath, a victorious silhouette stands over both the Lich and Layla, who are now lying defeated. The Lich, completely drained, seems utterly annoyed by the giant's newfound sentience and its praise. Layla, however, is exhilarated by the draw, her expression suggesting she's just fallen for her opponent. Layla casually returns the sword, eagerly suggesting they have a rematch sometime soon. She waves a cheerful goodbye under the moonlight, leaving the Lich to watch her departure. As his golem guide cheers, the Lich can only mutter about how unpredictable his former comrade is. A group of golems appears, revealing they witnessed the fight and now pledge their allegiance to him. The Lich stares at the giant's sword, internally panicking at the thought of this unwanted responsibility. A golem explains that possessing the sacred sword automatically makes him their new general. One of the golems tries to pass the massive weapon to the giant general, who remains unresponsive. They then offer the sword to the Lich, who recoils, wanting nothing to do with their leadership. Despite his reluctance, the golems erupt in cheers, forcing him to begrudgingly accept his new title. Back at his lab, he tells Alice he has a sinking feeling that his next opponent will be the hero. He grimly predicts that after facing Rosalie and Layla, the hero is undoubtedly his next opponent. Alice confidently reassures him, certain that defeating two of the hero's party members means he's unstoppable. The Lich nervously denies the existence of any other party members, trying to convince everyone it was just a trio. He shudders, recalling the hero's obnoxious energy and how much he dreads a reunion. A bandaged zombie girl suddenly bursts in, shouting that she has terrible news about the hero. The door flies open with dramatic force, underscoring the urgency of her message. The Lich and his followers turn with grim expressions, preparing for the worst. The girl solemnly announces that the legendary dragon slayer, the hero, is dead. Everyone stares in utter disbelief at the hero's lifeless body, completely shocked by the unexpected turn of events. The Lich immediately throws a massive hero's death memorial party, celebrating his rival's demise with the entire demon army. The Lich raises a goblet, offering a celebratory toast to the occasion. The entire demon army erupts in a wild frenzy, overjoyed by the news of the hero's demise. He dryly observes the chaos, noting just how universally despised his old rival truly was. His quiet reflection is interrupted by a familiar voice calling for his attention. The Demon King smirks at the pandemonium, remarking on how the hero's death has sent everyone into a celebratory craze. She excitedly shows him how the demon economy is booming, sarcastically thanking the hero for his final contribution. While she celebrates the financial windfall, the Lich seizes the opportunity to ask for a small favor. He calmly requests possession of the hero's corpse, which lies peacefully in its coffin. The Demon King seems unfazed by the morbid request, simply asking him to explain his reasoning. With a sinister undertone, he reveals his only motive is to conduct a little experiment. The scene shifts to the human kingdom, where the hero's body now lies in state. With a sudden jolt, the hero's corpse sits bolt upright in its coffin, seemingly alive once more. The Lich reveals his experiment was a success, using a secret art to possess and control the hero's body. He smugly names his new technique, finding it very important to emphasize the control aspect twice. His moment of triumph is interrupted by an intense woman in royal attire standing over him. She calls out to the hero, but the Lich internally rebrands himself as the Hero Lich. The woman begins to cry, recounting the rumors of his death and how much humanity worried. She gets right in his face, overcome with emotion and relief at his apparent return. He identifies her as Lanza, the human queen, noting her odd speech patterns and her closeness to the real hero. The Lich finds himself trapped in an embrace, realizing the clingy queen is now an obstacle to his plans. The queen squints suspiciously, questioning if he's truly the hero she knows. The Lich panics under her intense scrutiny, realizing his cover is about to be blown. She recalls the real hero's gentle nature, confused by this cold and distant behavior. Thinking fast, he lays on the charm, blaming his stiffness on being overwhelmed by her beauty. His smooth recovery works perfectly, and she blushes, completely convinced he's the real deal. Seizing the opportunity, he makes an excuse about needing to visit a comrade's house to get away. But the clingy queen refuses to let him go, grabbing his cape and insisting on joining him. They arrive at a secluded cabin in the woods, the very house the Lich lived in before his death. He internally groans, annoyed that he couldn't shake his overly attached royal companion. Inside the book-filled study, he awkwardly explains he's just retrieving items for his necromancer comrade. As he browses his old library, the queen watches him with a curious expression. She suddenly asks if his necromancer friend could bring back people from the distant past. The Lich pauses, caught off guard by her surprisingly specific line of questioning. Her eyes light up as she wonders if even evil people could be revived, and he confirms necromancy makes no moral judgments. He explains that while it's possible, the window for a reliable resurrection is only about a day. Eager to learn more, she asks about necromancy's other applications, and he lists a few of its darker uses. His detailed explanation leaves her both fascinated and slightly disturbed by the possibilities. He suddenly realizes he got carried away, forgetting his cover while passionately lecturing about his craft. Her expression hardens as she puts the pieces together, directly accusing him of not being the real hero. She reveals her suspicion stems from his unusual openness, as the real hero was always dismissive and secretive. The Lich sweats, trying to backpedal with a flimsy excuse about his newfound knowledge. She recalls how the hero was the only one who ever truly acknowledged her, while others just wanted her to be a silent symbol. Instead of anger, her eyes sparkle with excitement as she asks him to be her personal necromancy tutor. She eagerly asks to borrow a book on the subject, and he casually agrees, just wanting her to leave. He finds her fascination with his craft strange, but tells her to head home before sunset. With a cheerful wave, the queen dashes off, clutching her new skull-adorned textbook. A high-ranking clergyman intercepts her at the castle, noting her studious mood and the peculiar book. His friendly facade drops as he ominously leads her away for a private conversation. In the shadows, his expression turns to one of pure disgust as he recognizes the forbidden text. A public declaration is made that the wicked necromancer has been punished, with the queen now a masked figurehead for the church's judgment. The Lich overhears shocking news that Queen Lanza has been executed for studying necromancy. He pauses his work, having just finished gathering his research materials from the cabin. The townsfolk gossip that she turned her back on the church, leading to her swift punishment. He furiously confronts the men, demanding to know the details of Lanza's fate. Without waiting for an answer, he sprints towards the church, his mind racing with concern. He arrives to find Lanza surrounded by hooded figures, his expression hardening with cold resolve. A guard tries to stop him, but he's effortlessly shoved aside by the determined hero. The clergymen smugly inform him that they've dealt with the wicked necromancer in their midst. Ignoring their judgment, he kneels by Lanza's body and begins the forbidden art of resurrection. The hooded figures can only stare in disbelief, completely stunned by his blatant use of dark magic. The clergymen recoil in horror, questioning why the legendary hero would use forbidden magic. Lanza's eyes flutter open, and she weakly calls out to the man she believes is her savior. With a confident smile, the Lich assures her that he's getting them out of there. The church declares the hero a traitor and orders his capture as he carries the queen to safety. Now fugitives, Lanza worries about their future, but he tells her their only option is to keep moving. They narrowly avoid a patrol, watching from the shadows as the guards rush past their hiding spot. Their escape is cut short as they run into a familiar face in a dark alley. The saint, Rosalie. Rosalie's eyes narrow with suspicion, immediately sensing that the man before her is not the real hero. She instantly recognizes his sinister aura, correctly identifying him as the Lich, much to his shock. With terrifying intuition, she lays out his entire plan and vows to erase the detestable heretic on the spot. Lanza desperately tries to reason with Rosalie, shielding the Lich and defending her actions. She insists that her pursuit of forbidden knowledge hasn't actually harmed anyone. Rosalie seems to agree, recalling a lesson from her past that the use of a power defines its morality. She even concedes that necromancy could be used for good, echoing the Lich's own philosophy. But her understanding has a limit. She takes a battle stance and declares that as a heretic he must be eliminated. With unwavering conviction, she commands the enemy of her god to be purged from her sight. The Lich realizes diplomacy has failed, preparing himself and a nervous Lanza for the inevitable confrontation. Deciding not to hold back against his former comrade, he unleashes a powerful instant death spell. He channels the full force of his will, confident his dark magic will overwhelm her. But Rosalie stands completely unharmed, explaining that her divine blessing renders his magic useless, much to his shock. With his magic nullified, Rosalie declares it's her turn and lunges forward to deliver a powerful blow. He narrowly dodges, her fist shattering the wall behind him as he shields Lanza from the impact. The Lich desperately reminds her that she's attacking the body of her former comrade. She compliments his evasion, naming her devastating attack while he scoffs at her claims of divine power. With a solemn expression, she vows to free the hero's soul by destroying the vessel he inhabits. She follows up with a devastating kick, sending him flying as Lanza cries out in fear. The Lich slumps against the rubble, the hero's body heavily damaged from the impact. Rosalie reveals his true skeletal form beneath the disguise, trying to convince Lanza of his monstrous nature. But Lanza rushes past her, clinging to the Lich in a desperate embrace. She declares that his appearance is irrelevant, her unwavering faith in her hero touching the Lich's cold heart. Rosalie's patience runs out, and she declares they will both be eliminated for their heresy. Lanza looks up in shock as the Saint's attack is suddenly intercepted. Layla, the giant slayer, appears out of nowhere, effortlessly blocking Rosalie's powerful strike. The two warriors trade insults, their intense rivalry immediately flaring up. With a confident grin, Layla tells Lanza to take the Lich and make a run for it. Layla launches herself forward, eager to take on the Saint in a one-on-one brawl. Their fists collide in a powerful clash, signaling the start of an epic showdown. Enveloped in a divine aura, Rosalie questions Layla's decision to defy a higher power. Layla scoffs at the notion of gods, declaring her only allegiance is to a good fight. Having escaped the chaos, the Lich smugly decides to let his two former comrades wear each other out. He carries the injured queen away, leaving the destructive battle behind them. He reluctantly abandons his research materials, realizing he can't go back for them now. With the immediate danger past, he prepares to part ways and return to his own territory. But Lanza grabs his cloak, firmly insisting that he take her with him. The Lich falls silent, his expression revealing just how much he hates this unexpected complication. She repeats her request with a pleading look, hoping to sway the reluctant necromancer. He tries to brush her off, claiming he'd rather focus on research, but she sees right through his excuse. Lanza admits she's out of options, with no home or allies left to turn to. He coldly turns his back on her, telling her to solve her own problems as she desperately calls out. He bluntly points out the flaw in her plan. As the human queen, she'll be an enemy in the demon lands too. Lanza passionately declares her unwavering commitment to studying necromancy. Her words trigger another painful flashback of being ostracized for his life's work. Overcome with emotion, he feels validated for the first time in his long, lonely existence. His entire demeanor shifts as he cheerfully agrees, catching Lanza off guard with his sudden change of heart. A familiar rabbit-eared girl appears, suggesting he just punch anyone who questions his decision. She then playfully implies that she's the only one whose opinion should matter to him. The rabbit girl suddenly grabs his cloak, trying to drag him away from his new apprentice. She pouts with jealousy, threatening him for paying attention to another woman. The Lich is stunned, recognizing Layla and demanding to know what happened to her fight with Rosalie. The scene reveals a battered Rosalie, who grimly notes that her powerhouse rival will be recovered in just half a day. Rosalie sits defeated, claiming she at least managed to shatter her opponent's entire body. Layla flexes triumphantly, boasting that sheer willpower is enough to overcome such injuries, much to the Lich's disbelief. She casually admits her own internal injuries were severe, deciding to call their brutal fight a draw. Changing the subject, she grabs the Lich's cloak, her attention now fully on him. He immediately rejects her unspoken demand, refusing to be dragged along with her. Layla gets close, asking to join him in the demon territory, but he coldly tells her to go home. He argues that a powerhouse like her has no need for his help to survive. She explains that by helping him, she's now a traitor to humanity and has nowhere else to go. With a blush, she confesses her true motive. She's intrigued by the only person who ever matched her in combat. The Lich coldly shuts her down, bluntly stating that being with her is the opposite of fun. Lanza has a sudden realization, concluding that Layla must be in love with the Lich. Layla begins throttling the Lich while he begs his new disciple for help, but Lanza simply pretends not to hear. A battered Lich asks the two women if they are still determined to follow him. He internally justifies his decision, seeing Lanza as a fresh perspective and Layla as a convenient bodyguard. With cheerful smiles, both Lanza and Layla confirm their decision to join his cause. The Lich formally introduces his two new human comrades to his followers, telling everyone to get along. He then breaks the fourth wall, explaining their quick journey was to save on comic pages. Upon their return, an unimpressed Alice greets him with a firm grip, welcoming him back with a strained smile. She immediately questions his judgment, demanding to know why he brought the human queen and their strongest warrior into their territory. He tries to deflect blame, but Alice scolds him for making excuses like a child bringing home a stray animal. Alice tries to downplay the issue, comparing the humans to the more agreeable Beastmen. He naively believes a simple chat will smooth things over with his followers. His optimism is immediately shattered as his followers aggressively surround the two human women. Lanza tries to win them over with a smile, announcing her intention to study necromancy with them. Layla, on the other hand, casually asks for permission to just kill the hostile crowd. A follower nervously tells her to back off, recognizing the genuine threat in her words. But her charm works wonders, as the hostile crowd instantly flips, offering her sweets and assistance. A massive golem interrupts the friendly atmosphere, stepping forward to confront Layla directly. The Lich watches the scene unfold, unimpressed and internally commenting on how simple everyone is. The golem takes an intimidating step forward, demanding her attention as it prepares to issue a challenge. The golems surround Layla, threatening her for trespassing on their turf. Unfazed, Layla stares down the massive golem, the air crackling with tension. With a fierce grin, she eagerly accepts their challenge, daring them to make a move. The Lich decides to ignore the brawl, leading Lanza away as Layla starts fighting in the background. He finds the young beastman, Crimson, and informs her she'll be studying necromancy alongside Lanza. Spotting Crimson in the hallway, the Lich declares her arrival is perfectly timed for an introduction. Crimson stares back with a deadpan expression, clearly unenthusiastic about the news. The Lich prompts Lanza to introduce herself, who steps forward with a friendly smile. But Crimson violently rejects the handshake, furiously declaring she'll never be friends with the former queen. A stunned Lanza asks what she did wrong, while Crimson looks away in disgust. The Lich questions the sudden hostility, while Alice tries to mediate between the two new students. He incorrectly assumes Crimson's anger is just another form of prejudice against his craft. Crimson unleashes her fury, accusing all royalty of being selfish and ignoring the plight of commoners. The Lich has a flashback to his own army's rampage, grimly agreeing that such actions are unforgivable. With tears in her eyes, she directly blames Lanza for abandoning her village when it was attacked. Lanza doesn't make excuses, instead offering a heartfelt and somber apology. She admits her own ignorance was a mistake, wishing she had understood their suffering sooner. Overwhelmed by this unexpected kindness, Crimson breaks down and embraces the former queen. Their touching moment is cut short by Layla's shouting, whom the Lich calmly bans from the lab due to her destructive nature. He watches the two new friends run off, dryly observing how quickly Crimson's opinion changed. Layla casually explains she became the new giant general after their fight, much to the Lich's confusion. She proudly flexes, thrilled to have an official title to go with her immense strength, while the Lich just looks defeated. Sometime later, the Lich oversees his two new students, Lanza and Crimson, as they diligently study necromancy in his lab. The lab's inhabitants enjoy a period of peace and feasting, with Layla's appetite clearly standing out. The good times come to a halt as Alice announces in an emergency meeting that their budget has been completely depleted. She explains the financial crisis is entirely due to Layla's massive food consumption, leaving the Lich speechless. An aide presents a pie chart, visually demonstrating how Layla's appetite consumes nearly all of their resources. When his followers blame him for the situation, the Lich immediately jumps to a simple, albeit drastic, solution. His followers quickly talk him down, reminding him that assassinating the giant general would have severe political consequences. Unfazed by the logistical nightmare, the Lich coolly declares that he already has a plan in mind. His grand plan is revealed, a comically obvious trail of food leading Layla away from the lab. From a safe distance, the Lich and his followers can't believe she's actually falling for it. She happily skips along the path of treats, completely oblivious to the trap. Layla stops to devour the bait, mocking the supposed idiot who left it all behind. She blissfully enjoys her meal, completely unaware she's being watched. Her feast is interrupted by a stern-looking warrior who calls her a traitor. Annoyed, Layla turns to confront the stranger, demanding to know who he is. The man confirms his intel was correct, having found his target exactly where he expected. The Lich realizes this was Alice's doing, as she admits to leaking Layla's location to this new enemy. The warrior introduces himself as Young the Spear, a member of the new hero party, and vows to eliminate Layla. The Lich coldly decides to let the warrior solve his Layla problem for him, a plan Alice finds disturbingly pragmatic. Young's true motivation is revealed. He's just trying to impress the Saint Rosalie. Layla finds his devotion amusing and eagerly accepts the challenge, always ready for a good fight. The spearman scoffs, completely underestimating the legendary giant slayer before him. He confidently explains that his spear's superior reach makes his victory a certainty. Unimpressed, Layla calmly informs him that she also brought a weapon to the fight. She gives him a sly look, ready to reveal the true source of her power. Young's confidence shatters as he stares in disbelief, but his loyalty to Rosalie keeps him from retreating. Layla effortlessly hefts the colossal greatsword, dwarfing her opponent's weapon and his ego. With a wild grin, she declares the playing field has been leveled and lunges into battle. Young desperately calls upon the Saint for strength, refusing to be underestimated by his opponent. A moment later, Layla smiles, feeling refreshed after her brief but satisfying warm-up. Her opponent lies embedded in a crater, his overconfidence leading to a swift and decisive defeat. The Lich rants from afar, realizing Layla is an unkillable monster with an equally monstrous appetite. Alice states the obvious as they watch through their binoculars. Their brilliant plan has completely failed. Resigned to their fate, they watch Layla happily skip back, accepting they must now coexist with this force of nature. Back in his lab, the Lich slumps in defeat, reminded that they also have the Beastmen's budget to worry about. He asks Alice for a solution, and she suggests their only option is to appeal to the Demon King. The Lich laughs off the crisis, earning a sharp rebuke from Alice to take the matter seriously. He complains that the Demon King's cheerful energy is too exhausting to deal with, dreading the inevitable meeting. His financial brooding is cut short as Alice bursts in, announcing an emergency. The Lich is startled by the sudden intrusion, demanding to know what's happening. He's presented with a new discovery, his expression shifting to one of intense fascination. Alice explains their scouting unit found something strange and needs his expert opinion. The discovery is a sophisticated, cat-eared golem, unlike any he's ever seen. He immediately launches into a lecture, explaining the rarity and mysterious technology of such a find. He learns the advanced golem was uncovered in a previously unknown ancient ruin. Lanza's innocent question reveals her complete ignorance on the subject of golems. The Lich's mind races, seeing the ruin as a potential goldmine for research and a solution to his budget crisis. Reinvigorated by this new opportunity, he decisively orders Alice to prepare for field work. The Lich rallies his team, enthusiastically announcing their expedition to the ancient ruins. Meanwhile, the mysterious cat-eared golem activates, its eyes glowing with an unknown purpose. The expedition team sets off, with even the ghost follower eagerly joining the journey. He dramatically explains his true goal, to uncover the dormant, unknown technology hidden within the ruins. Crimson interrupts his grand speech, pointing out that his ghost companion seems completely uninterested. The ghost internally laments its bad luck, having hoped to accompany Lanza instead of Crimson. Crimson tries to console the sulking ghost, promising it can share all the details with Lanza later. The Lich explains Lanza's absence, citing the potential danger and her lack of combat prowess. They arrive at the border to find human sentries already guarding the site, complicating their mission. As Crimson panics about being discovered, the Lich calmly dismisses her concerns, ready to handle the guards. The Lich steps forward to confront the guards, who nervously tell him to back off. He prepares a powerful death spell, clearly having no intention of negotiating. A terrified guard points at the Lich, calling him a monster just before the spell hits. With the guards neutralized, a shocked Crimson demands to know why he resorted to such extreme measures. He calmly justifies his actions, but she argues that there were less permanent ways to handle the situation. Crimson is left speechless, unable to argue against his cold, pragmatic logic. He suddenly recalls Alice's warning to be more empathetic, realizing he's upset his young apprentice. The Lich awkwardly tries to comfort her by suggesting she can just resurrect the guards after their mission is over. With the debate settled, he impatiently ushers his followers into the dark entrance of the ruins. Inside, Crimson asks about their objective, and he reveals their top priority is to find the Golem's instruction manual. He explains that Golem creation is a different discipline, making a manual essential for understanding it. He also reveals a more practical goal, using the golems as free labor to solve their budget crisis. The team comically struggles through a series of dangerous traps hidden within the ancient ruins. Their ghost companion ends up taking the brunt of the damage, acting as an unwilling shield. After their perilous journey, they finally reach a massive golem factory, their ultimate destination. He quickly locates what appears to be the instruction manual, his primary objective within the ruins. As he reads, his expression shifts, realizing the technology is far more advanced than he ever imagined. He's amazed to discover the golems have individual personalities linked by a shared consciousness. A diagram shows how their hive mind allows them to share experiences instantly, multiplying their effectiveness. While Crimson insists such a dangerous power should be sealed, the Lich's scientific curiosity compels him to press on. He marvels at the army of golems, realizing this technology could completely reshape the world's power balance. His thoughts are interrupted by the cat-eared golem, which activates and delivers a pre-recorded welcome message. The automated voice promises a better life, identifying him as a new user of their system. It then prompts him to begin the user registration process. Impressed by the voice recognition, he excitedly introduces himself, accidentally including the phrase "it's" before his name. He immediately tries to correct the system, annoyed at his own verbal slip-up. The literal-minded AI registers his full statement, officially welcoming Mr. It's Lich. It then registers his frantic correction as a second username, leaving him utterly speechless. Enraged by the technological blunder, he prepares to destroy the golem, only to be stopped by a panicked Crimson. She calmly points out that he caused the problem and suggests they just move on, since the username can be changed later. The AI then prompts him to set a password, but his first attempt is immediately rejected. It explains that for enhanced security, the password must be at least 10,000 digits long. The Lich turns to Crimson, calmly telling her he won't stop her from destroying it this time. He playfully lifts the golem into the air, his frustration momentarily forgotten. But his mood sours again as he drops it, dismissing the advanced AI as a useless piece of junk. He then violently slams the golem to the ground, his patience completely exhausted. The golem's internal sensors activate, identifying and targeting both the demon and the human. Its programming concludes that both demons and humans are inherently dangerous life forms. Emergency alerts flash through its system, classifying both species as immediate threats. With a cold stare, the golem activates its human and demon extermination protocol. Crimson reminds him they still have to revive the guards, a task he clearly finds tedious. With their mission done, the trio stands at the ruins exit, ready to return. But their return is cut short by a frantic Alice, who rushes out to meet them. A wisp of dark flame also calls out his name, signaling a serious emergency. Alice delivers the devastating news. The golems have gone berserk and Lanza has been killed. The Lich asks what's wrong, completely unprepared for the terrible report. He and Crimson are completely stunned, their faces contorted in disbelief and horror. A flashback reveals Lanza's first encounter with the cat-eared golem, which she found incredibly cute. The scene shifts to the lab, just before the Lich's team even reach the golem factory. Lanza is seen playfully handling the small golem, completely unaware of the danger it represents. The golem internally panics, completely baffled by the human woman's strange behavior. Lanza cheerfully decides to give her new mechanical friend the adorable nickname, Go-chan. She proudly finishes her work, having adorned the golem's ears with 2 cute bows. The golem experiences a strange new emotion, a warmth it can't quite identify. It shyly offers its thanks, much to Lanza's delighted surprise. Lanza excitedly introduces herself, and the golem repeats her name, committing it to memory. She declares them friends, and the golem seems to accept this new, unexpected bond. But its core programming overrides this connection, detecting a threat and activating its extermination protocol. Lanza grows concerned as the golem's friendly demeanor suddenly vanishes. As its eyes glow with menace, the golem fights its own programming, desperately trying to warn its new friend to run. Its friendly programming is overridden as the golem switches to a full-on extermination mode. A confused Lanza calls out its nickname, completely unaware of the imminent danger. In a swift and silent motion, the golem carries out its deadly directive. Hearing the news, the Lich immediately orders his team to rush back to the lab. Alice informs him that Layla is single-handedly holding off the Golem army back at their base. When Crimson brings up the guards, the Lich coldly states that Lanza's revival is their only priority. He makes it an official order from her teacher, forcing her to comply despite her reservations. The entire team makes a hasty retreat, flying through the air to get back in time. He feigns concern for Lanza, while internally panicking about the potential damage to his lab. Alice sees through his act, realizing his order was a clever way to absolve Crimson of any guilt. Back in the lab, the team successfully revives Lanza, calling out to her as she awakens. Lanza groggily opens her eyes, casually remarking that she seems to have died yet again. A battered ghost follower reports that Layla has single-handedly neutralized the Golem threat. Outside, Layla lounges victoriously amidst the mechanical carnage, having easily handled the situation. The Lich offers a curt acknowledgement of her efforts, impressed despite himself. With a confident grin, Layla boasts that the Golems were a decent warm-up but never stood a chance. Holding the deactivated cat Golem, the Lich suggests they destroy it, but Lanza vehemently objects. She throws herself in front of the Golem, desperately pleading with him not to harm her mechanical friend. The Lich is completely baffled by her attachment to the very machine that just killed her. Crimson reminds Lanza of this fact, but the former queen remains convinced the Golem had a good reason. The cat-eared Golem sits dejectedly against a wall, finally explaining its actions to the group. It reveals its revenge system was triggered after it detected an attack on another Golem. The Golem sadly concludes they can't be friends after what it did, but Lanza passionately disagrees. The Lich breaks into a cold sweat, realizing he was the one who attacked the Golem in the ruins. A scout suddenly bursts in, warning that a massive army of golems is heading straight for them. Lanza embraces the small golem, forgiving it and declaring them friends forever, much to Crimson's surprise. A terrifying swarm of spherical golems descends upon them, filling the entire horizon. The Lich and his followers panic, realizing they stand no chance against a second, even larger wave. The cat-eared golem calmly states the annihilation protocol is still active and the army will not stop. Lanza looks out at the approaching horde, innocently identifying the new arrivals as more of her mechanical friends. The Lich desperately orders Layla to intercept the horde, but she's too hungry to even stand up. The cat-eared golem bids a solemn farewell to Lanza, asking her not to forget their brief friendship. Lanza cries out in protest as her mechanical friend turns and flies directly into the enemy swarm. It positions itself in the center of the Golem army, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for its precious new friend. The Golem's body begins to glow with an overwhelming amount of destructive energy. With a final, determined look, it vows to protect Lanza at any cost. A massive explosion engulfs the entire Golem army as Lanza screams its name in horror. In the aftermath, only a single screw remains, which Lanza reaches for with a trembling hand. The Lich awkwardly tries to explain that souls don't reside in spare parts, completely missing the emotional gravity of the moment. Lanza tearfully clutches the screw, convinced her friend's spirit is still with her and vowing never to forget its sacrifice. The Lich complains about the noisy display of emotion, completely unmoved by the dramatic scene. He tries to launch into another lecture, but Crimson silently begs him to read the room for once. Their awkward moment is interrupted by a horned woman who introduces herself as a messenger from the Dragon Clan.